Hello, today we're going to work on our Excel formulas and functions lesson. Before we begin, you'll notice that we've already downloaded the formulas and functions student file. Here you'll find information about our Smart Cookie Bakery employees, the regions they work in, and their sales so far of three main types of cookies. We'll be filling in the rest of this information throughout the class. Moving down, you'll see there are three additional tabs: item list, which includes the item ID number, cookie name, and the price per cookies; or order number, which we'll be using later with VLOOKUP; and our regional totals, which we'll also come back to in a little bit. Moving to the Sales by Employee tab, we'll begin coming up with the total units sold for each employee with an auto sum. To begin, select cell G2, and then in the editing group, select auto sum. Excel will look for the cells that are closest to where it's working and suggest adding them up. In this case, that is correct, and we can press Enter on the keyboard. We'll also be bringing this information down through the rest of the column with the fill handle. So as a reminder, that is the cursor shape that appears when our cursor is at the very bottom right-hand corner of a cell. By using this, we've taken this formula equals sum D2 to F2 and applied the same one with a relative reference. Relative reference, as a reminder, means that Excel will update the cells it's looking at based on if you are moving down, across, up from where the formula began. Next, we need the total revenue for chocolate chip. In this case, we're going to begin using an absolute reference. First, let's begin our formula. Starting with H2, I'm going to type in the equal sign, and because the total chocolate chip sold is in D2, I will select that. And then we are multiplying, so the star, the asterisk symbol. The cost for each of these cookies is listed under item list. So we're going to navigate away from this tab and into item list. You'll see that they're both still highlighted because Excel knows that we are still working in the Sales by Employee tab, even though we've temporarily moved over to item list. Next, we want the price of chocolate chip cookies. To make sure that when we use the fill handle in a moment, our formula doesn't start looking at the price of oatmeal, then sugar, and then nothing, we want to tell Excel that this is an absolute reference, meaning no matter what, only look at cell C2 in the item list tab. To do that, I'm going to click into my formula, and using my keyboard, you can either manually type in the $2 needed, or with the FN tool, press F4. All right, so now we have the completed formula. Equal sign D2 multiplied by item list, absolute reference to C2. Press enter. And now when we use the fill handle to fill down, you'll see that even though our cookie totals from column D move accordingly, our item list C2 remains intact. We'll do the same with oatmeal and sugar. So for this one, for oatmeal, equal sign, oatmeal total, which is E2, multiplied by, again, we're going to move down to item list, select that oatmeal cost, and then while we're in the formula bar, press F4 or manually type in the dollar signs. Once we have that, press enter and fill down. The relative reference also works moving across. So for example, if I know that this is correct, I can use the fill handle to fill in the cost or the total revenue for sugar. So what happens with our formula? Selecting in here, I can see it is correctly updated from column E to column F. now says equals F2 multiplied by item list C3 because we've told Excel do not move from C3. One way, instead of having to completely rewrite the formula that we could update this, is to select into the cell and simply replace that 3 with a 4. Pressing enter, we're now telling Excel to multiply the total sugar by the cost of sugar cookies. Just another way to do the same thing. All right, last piece on here is to determine the grand total revenue. Here we need to add the total revenue for chocolate chip, oatmeal, and sugar. I'll begin by selecting auto sum once again. And here, Excel has understood that there is a bit of a difference in what's going on behind the scenes of these numbers. So, because D, E, and F were number data where they were manually written in, column G has a auto sum formula. H, I, and J have a slightly more involved but different formula. Excel's guessing that we probably just want to add up these repeated pieces, which is in fact correct. So we'll press enter. We'd also be able to, if we needed, type in equals sum, open parentheses, and then we could select the cells we needed manually. However you choose to do it, once you have your numbers, you can use your fill handle to fill down. So now that we've got our totals, we can convert these into dollar amounts. I'm going to highlight from H2 to K33. Then in the number group, select the general dropdown and currency. Here you'll see Excel will update all of the numbers so that there are only 2 decimal places and they all have dollar signs and commas in the thousands. Next, we're going to move on to our regional totals tab. Here we've included the regional names listed because for this part, how we write the numbers is very important. They need to match exactly what they look like in the Sales by Employee tab. So to save ourselves having to make sure we type it exactly right, we can simply highlight this section, go up to the clipboard, select Cut, click on where it currently says Region or A2, and paste. I'm also going to double click in between A and B so that my region names fit nicely. In this case, we're trying to set up a table that shows the total units sold for each individual region as well as the grand totals. So ultimately, we're asking Excel to look at the information in the Sales by Employee tab and only add it up if a person works for a specific region. To do this, SUMIF is going to help us tell Excel exactly what to look for. Beginning with cell B3 selected, I'm going to click on the FX or Insert Function tool. Within here, we can tell Excel what formula or function we'd like to use. And right now we have most recently used. I'd like the full list so that I can find SUMIF. From here, I'm going to go to All, click anywhere in this box to activate it, and then or SUMIFs, or quickly we can jump to that portion of the list. As a reminder, we are looking for SUMIFs with an S at the end. Select this and choose OK. Here, this function argument box will walk us through exactly what we need to do. Sum range, what are we adding up? We're going to select this, move over to our Sales by Employee tab, and choose the information we want. In this case, we're first adding up our total sold. So I'm going to highlight from G2, I don't need the label, down to G33. While we're working on this, it's important to keep in mind we're going to want it to be an absolute function. So F4. Next, the criteria range. What information do we want Excel to look for before we can decide if we're going to add up what's in the sum range? This is region. We're going to select C2 to C33. And again, select the F4 button on your keyboard. Lastly, criteria. What is the thing that Excel is looking for in the criteria range in order to decide if it's going to add up the sum range? Well, here we're going to select A3. We're not going to make this an absolute reference because when we fill down this formula, we want Excel to continue looking at the next region name. From here, I'll say OK and click, hold, and drag down. Here you'll see that Excel only put the absolute reference for C33. I also want to make sure that C2 has the absolute reference, so I'll press that as well. It's important to make sure that your absolute references are consistent. Lastly, in criteria 1, I'm going to tell Excel what to look for within my table to decide if we should add up something in the sum range. The information in criteria 1 should be something that is also available within the criteria range. In this case, we're going to select Far West because it's a region name and it is available within the list of criteria range. Here we'll say OK, and we've got our total. Excel is looking at the complete list of sales by employee and only adding up the total units sold for people who work in the Far West. Next, to get the rest of the totals, I'm going to use the fill handle and fill down. Similarly, we're going to set up our grand total revenue. Again, I'm going to select the insert function tool. This time, if I go to where it says or select a category, I can choose most recently used and find sum ifs. I'm going to say OK, and then my sum range will be in the sales by employee tab. This time it's grand total revenue. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag to highlight K2 to K33. As a reminder, I'm going to update in my formula my absolute references. This time it looks like I'm going to have to press them both twice. All right, criteria range is going to be the same as it was in the previous because, again, we're breaking things down by region. So C2 to C33 with my F4s. Lastly, criteria range. This will once again be a relative reference to A3. Now that I've got everything in, I can say OK and click, hold, and drag down. While this is all highlighted, I'm also going to turn it into currency. Again, in the number group, general currency. I can also add in commas for anything in the thousands in my total units sold by highlighting these cells and selecting the comma. Now that we have our regional totals broken out, we can move on to the next part. Next, we're going to use the VLOOKUP using our Order Number tab. Here you'll see in row 3, we've listed quite a bit of context about what's happening in each cell. The way that this is set up is somewhat like an invoice. The idea being, if someone were to call and place an order for cookies, all we would need for them to tell us is the item ID, cookie that they're considering, and how many. We can from there take care of the rest. To begin, we're going to put a few pieces in just to fill out our formula. Something else to notice is that the tax is listed up in row 1. Instead of repeating the same number over and over, we're going to use an absolute reference. All right, so from here, our item name is going to be a VLOOKUP. I'm going to select the FX or insert function tool, and under most recently used, select all. From here, again, I'm going to click onto the select a function to activate this. And if I type in the letter V, it'll bring me to the V section of the list. Here, I'm selecting VLOOKUP and OK. Similar to our last calculation, Excel will somewhat walk us through. To begin filling this out, we're going to get our lookup value. In this case, it'll be whatever item ID we've put in. So selecting A4 and then moving on to table array. Our table array is found in the item list tab. In this case, It's the table of information we have from A1 to C4. Simply select and drag to highlight that whole section, and Excel will automatically add it in. Once again, we need to use absolute references. So I'm going to use F4 to put my dollar signs in and convert my table array section to absolute references. Another feature of VLOOKUP is that regardless of where your table is, Excel looks at the first line of the table or column of the table as number 1, then number 2, and number 3. Normally our columns are always letters, but this is a unique situation. In this case, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. So we need to tell Excel where in this table, row 1 or column 1, 2, or 3, the information that we need for this VLOOKUP can be found. In our case, it's in column 2. Oh, and because I went back and forth, I have item list in there, so I'll just delete that and type in the number 2. Last, we need to tell Excel if we need an exact match or something similar. So we are going to type in false. Again, spelling matters. We'll say okay, and it looks like something isn't quite right. Well, right now there is no number in our item ID. If I go back to item list and copy an item ID number and paste it in here, I'll start to see information populating. Also going to widen all of these cells. To do all of them at once, I'm going to select the little triangle between A and 1. This will highlight my entire workbook, and then double click. This will make sure that all of my columns are the right width. So we have our item ID number, the name of the item, and now we want Excel to automatically populate the price. To do this, we'll set up an additional VLOOKUP. Once more, insert function tool, most recently used, VLOOKUP, OK. Here, our lookup value. Once again, it's going to be our item ID. This is something that we want to be able to update if we drag this formula down, so we'll leave it without any dollar signs. Table array, however, we want to stay the same. So our table array, we will move back down to item list, highlight A1 to C4, let Excel write in the name of the tab, and then also let Excel, through the F4 tab or tool, update our function. Here we need the price, which happens to be in the third column of our table. So write in the number 3, and then once again, false. We'll say OK, and we have our price. We can put in any number for the quantity. And so our subtotal is going to be equal sign price, or C4, multiplied by our quantity, in this case, D4. Pressing enter, we can see we are ordering $279 worth of sugar cookies. To get the sales tax, we need to know what, in this example, 6.625 of 279 is. Of always lets us know we're doing a multiplication. So here I'm going to say F4, which is this cell, equals, so equal sign, E4 multiplied by J1. With the J1, we are again using that F4 tool to get the dollar signs in. Oop. And then we press enter. Finally, for our grand total, we're going to take our subtotal and our sales tax and add them up. So equals subtotal, or in this case, E4, plus sales tax, F4, equals. And I'm also going to make a few small changes. I want to list some of these numbers as currency. So I'm going to select C4, press the Control key, and then also E4, F4, and G4. The Control key allows me to select certain cells and not others. For example, we left out our quantity. That doesn't need to be listed as currency. All right, these are all listed as currency. And now, as an example, I'm going to copy the ID numbers for a few other cookies. Suppose I had called in, said I would like these item numbers, and I need 50 of one and 75 of the other. Well, I can simply use the fill handle to get all of that information. There we go. And that is our formulas and functions class.